Thank you so much. And I'm actually really excited to follow Professor Cohn because he did the wonderful, great law school professor thing of asking a whole lot of questions. And I'd like to at least spend my next 5 minutes describing some of the organizations and people out there who are at least trying to answer some of those questions, or at least think they're trying to answer some of those questions. So internationally, what we've seen over the last few years is an explosion of national governments that have started to try to think about some of these governance questions about AI. And by governance, what I mean, and Professor Cohn talked a little bit about this, is that we've heard already today about some of the tremendous promise and opportunity that AI has, both generally and in the healthcare space. But there's also a lot of potential risks, public safety risks, privacy risks, health risks, and so on. And so one of the questions that a lot of folks have been asking is what laws and regulations and norms and standards need to be in place in order to help balance those risks and that potential. And so over the last couple of years, about now 18 different governments have put out national AI strategies. A lot of these strategies are very rah-rah AI, here's $1 billion for more research. But some of them are actually starting to lay a foundation for what regulations might need to be in place. We also have companies that are out there that are starting to explain what they think needs to be in place, often in the form of various principles or ethical guidelines. We have IBM, we have Microsoft, we have Google, and others are stating what they think needs to be in place for AI governance. There are also a variety of other organizations that are out there. In particular, the IEEE has just published their version 2 of their ethically aligned design principles. You have groups like the ITU and the World Economic Forum. The IDRC published a paper about a year ago on the human rights implications of AI. And so folks are starting to think about this sort of broad collection of both existing laws and regulations that might be applied to AI, but also new laws and regulations that might be needed. So I like to think of like that last moment at the end of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they say, "Top men, Dr. Jones, top men." So clearly, with all these groups thinking about this, it's a solved problem, right? No, just kidding. That would be a waste of our day if it was a solved problem. The issue is that there's really 3 big challenges that we have. First, it's early days for both the technology and the law. There's a lot of obviously exciting research applications of AI, but actually it's still quite early in terms of the use, particularly in the healthcare sector. All of those various guidelines, the national strategies, the companies, the other organizations out there, all of their principles and guidelines are not self-executing. There's a lot of work to be done in explaining how that would translate to actual laws and regulations, and particularly in the healthcare space. And finally, AI is embedded into complex systems that already have a lot of laws in place, whether it's HIPAA or GDPR or other laws that may or may not apply to the use of AI. And so there's a lot of work that has to be done in thinking about how those will apply. And so I just want to give 2 brief examples of where to really highlight the work that remains to be done in translating these principles into work that can actually be done. This is from Japan's Strategic Council for AI Technology. And in their artificial intelligence technology strategy, this is their, what they're talking about when they talk about healthcare and AI. They're really at the phase of talking about, phase 1 is essentially a lot of collect data and deploy AI, and their phase 2 is things like nanobots that work inside of the human body. It's at that high level of, here's this really ambitious plan and here's how it's going to work. But as we've heard, there's a lot of questions about, who's going to regulate that? What's the privacy implications of that going to be? this kind of document really doesn't touch on that. Similarly, in the EU, sort of the other extreme of talking about these sort of ethical guidelines, and they mention the application to health, but they really don't specifically apply any of these ethical frameworks to health specifically. So the work that's going on internationally really has a lot to go to really apply to healthcare. So I have a few just questions, but I'm out of time, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.